Welcome to Speed Talk Live, which isn't really live, but a poorly produced podcast where we talk about NASCAR and all things racing. And occasionally we have a special guest or two, when we can get them to show up. Sit down, strap in, pull those belts tight. Speed Talk Live is on the air. Welcome everyone, another edition of Speed Talk Live. Here we are yet again. Another great week. We're going to talk about Watkins Glen, look ahead to Bristol, and we also got some time to spend. We also had a chance to spend some time with one of my favorite drivers, Chase Briscoe, and we've got some comments from him about his performance this weekend and looking forward to Bristol. I'm Greg Engel, editor, cupscene.com. With me, as always, my associate editor. This week, he's back across the pond, back in merry old England. Owen Johnson, how are you, my friend?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. So you're back over in England after your foray here in the States. So it's like 11 o'clock there or something. It's pretty late. But so you're back there. You're getting ready to go back to school. But that doesn't mean that you're still not watching races and seeing what's going on. So let's talk about it. Let's dive into it. Watkins Glen. What a thriller that was. The first time this race has been in the playoffs, it did not disappoint. It continued a string, in my mind, of some of the best racing we've had in many, many years. This weekend, we had the overtime thriller. Looked like Chris Buescher was going to walk away with it. Towards the end, there was a caution, a legitimate caution, by the way. And he came back, SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, passed him. Looked like then Shane was going to pull the second win of his Cup career off. Nope. Chris denied him, beat one of the best road course racers in NASCAR, and I would argue the world right now. But he's out of the playoffs, having missed it by the closest finish in NASCAR history at Kansas. Here's what he had to say afterwards.
Yeah, I hadn't gone through that part of it. You know what, for missing the playoffs, it hurt. It definitely stung there, and to have the season we had and have that many close calls, near misses, certainly doesn't feel good. But I had no point until you just asked the question. Have we thought about what it would have meant until now? That's just good old fashioned win right there. So in that sense, it's very special for me, for this team to get this BuildSubmarines.com Mustang into victory lane on a road course. That's a big accomplishment for myself. We've been so good on these things. We've averaged out so good, much like our season. We've had a fantastic average throughout the year. We just we haven't been able to win a road course yet, and we finally got that done today. This race car was so good. Practice was really good, and I think lap averages, we were P1 on averages after the two practices, so we knew we were good after a couple of laps, and qualifying certainly was not very good. So had to pass a lot of cars, had to have some fantastic strategy, and if we're going to be blunt about it, not having to think about points at all on the playoff side of it or any cutoffs opened up more opportunities for us today to be able to go out there and get that win.
So what was it like on that final lap, having to beat a driver like SVG?
Yeah, man, I sure did like it being 4 seconds out front and cruising to victory. That sure seemed a lot easier, but a little bit wild there at the end to have caution after caution was certainly frustrating. Of course, the two that we got away clean, we had cautions immediately up through the S's, right? So the third one there, everyone just drove into one a little bit deeper yet, knowing it was OT, and ended up just up the hill and lost the lead, and knew that was going to be a very tough pass to get SVG back, and we tailed him there for that last lap. Took the white and realized that we had gained a little bit, and went up through the S's, and I seen him just hanging on to it really loose, and I went to a point where I wasn't really comfortable at my entry marker into the bus stop, and I think he was still going. So I kind of had a feeling something big was getting ready to happen, and sure enough, he had that big slide there and went to try and go left, and he was still correcting and coming back, so went to try and cross over and just good hard race there. He tried to cover it and had already gotten the fender in, and just was able to get clear of him off the carousel and run. You know what? Just run.
All right. So what do you think? What do you think, Owen? I know you were probably as thrilled with it as I was.
I mean, it was definitely a thriller at the end, especially. But what most impressed me was just the improvement to the racing throughout. I remember this race last year where we just talked about drivers being unable to pass, limited tire wear, and so much of the conversation around stages and road course racing came up again. This year, not only was there a good finish, but I felt like there was racing all throughout the race that was really, really good, really compelling, particularly whenever SVG had to hunt someone down, and he's just so impressive on these road courses. But credit to NASCAR for making some changes to the track. There were some changes to the runoff areas. Goodyear for making some changes to the tire that we really clearly saw. And the drivers were putting on a great show with that finish and just throughout the race.
I thought the best example of the Goodyear tires falling off, Lee Diffie, who I still love. The guy's great. I love hearing him. I would want him to do my voicemail messages. Maybe I'll hit him up. We saw him at Daytona, right? So maybe I'll hit him up next time I see him and get him to do my voicemail message. Anyway, as he pointed out, it was like falling off a cliff, right? Drivers were great, had great grip, and all of a sudden, just boom, it was gone. Chris Buescher took advantage of that, and that's what really got him to the front towards the end. Is when it came in and changed tires before anybody else. Everybody else saw that and followed him, and it became competitive from there. So I love that part of it, but I know some drivers who didn't like part of it. Were all the playoff drivers except two who had terrible finishes. Ryan Blaney crashed out on the first lap. I mean, come on, that was I couldn't imagine the disappointment of crashing out on the first lap. But he had some by NASCAR rules, he had to be towed back to the garage because he couldn't steer. And he had some few choice words for NASCAR officials. We don't know exactly what he said, other than the fact that he was pissed off that the NASCAR officials wouldn't let him work on the car in the garage. But hey, NASCAR rules, if you go read the rule book, clearly state that if you've been damaged in an accident and you go behind pit wall or you go in the garage, sorry, your day's done. Yeah, if you've got flat tires, NASCAR will tow you back to the garage, to the pit lane, and you can put tires on. But when you suffer damage, mechanical issues, you've got to go behind pit wall. You're out of the race. So too bad for him. Of course, Denny Hamlin was also swept up in that. He has some damage. He struggled all day long, and he ended up 23rd. He got beat and banged around, and didn't have a good day at all. And at the end of the day, you point out something that I know, but you pointed out another fact.
Well, it's the first time, and think in the history of the playoffs, according to The Athletic, that there's no playoff driver in the top 5 at one of these races. And I think it's the first time outside the top 2 was the stat given. But it's a crazy difference in a bunch of drivers who are not in the playoffs. Carson Hocevar, SVG, obviously, Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, all getting really good finishes, and the highest finishing playoff driver in 6th. But talk about Hamlin. It's Hamlin and his Joe Gibbs Racing teammate Martin Truex who seem to be getting the short end of the stick as the playoffs start. And they're actually both below the cut line heading into Bristol. Kind of a surprise. Obviously, Harrison Burton, while he's had a pretty good run for that team in the playoffs, kind of not really surprised to be below the cut line. And Brad Keselowski just hasn't picked up the stage points. He hasn't picked up a single stage point in the first 2 rounds. But Hamlin and Truex are in really strong Joe Gibbs Racing equipment. And they're kind of a surprise below the cut line. Both have found trouble recently, none more so than Hamlin. I profiled his rough start to the playoffs and Cup scene. Go read that there if you want. But he had a penalty before the postseason even started, then ran around the back in Atlanta, picked up very few points, and obviously got caught up in the wreck at Watkins Glen. So Hamlin's the defending Bristol race winner, but he and his teammate really need that kind of result to advance at this point in the playoffs out of the first round.
Yeah, I can go ahead and call it now. And, I'm a huge Harrison Burton fan. He's probably going to be eliminated unless something crazy happens. I don't think there'll be any magic. I think Harrison will be out. It's going to be interesting to see this weekend, though, that below that cut line, how that's going to play out. But you know what? Two of the playoff drivers, and you're right, nobody finished in the top 5. 2 of the playoff drivers, Austin Cindric finished 10th. Chase Briscoe was the highest finishing playoff driver at finishing 6th. which was such a turnaround after last week in Atlanta when he wrecked out early and he was at the bottom of the point standing. He was 21 points below the cut line last week, leaving Atlanta. Man, he needed that for him and his team. And I got a chance to spend a few minutes on various subjects with Chase today, talking all manner of things, including babies and racing. But Briscoe said that everyone is pumped at Stewart-Haas Racing, and they just needed, after the disaster at Atlanta, having that great comeback at Watkins Glen. But the whole team is now pumped and looking forward going into the future.
Yeah, the shop's been just super energetic, truthfully, since the Darlington win, obviously. But even today, it kind of had that same kind of atmosphere and vibe, I would say, of after we won Darlington. Like, we knew that was a huge day, right? That was everything we needed to do. And even though we didn't win the race, it honestly almost felt like we won the race, just from going from 21 down to now 6 up, and just the way we did it, to score a ton of stage points and to finish up front. It was a really big day for us as a race team. So confidence level is really, really high. And even just the non-14 guys, right? Like all of Stewart-Haas, when I walked through the shop, everybody's like, hey, awesome job, this past weekend, keep it up. So yeah, it's been a really good atmosphere here the last couple of weeks, and hopefully we can just keep that going.
In fact, he said that the performance this weekend at Watkins Glen and his win at Darlington really changed the whole atmosphere and the whole culture at Stewart-Haas Racing, which is going to be closing at the end of this year. And some of these guys don't know where they're going to go, but now they're a much more motivated, more pumped up team.
Yeah, I mean, just as winning was a huge change in just our whole demeanor as a race team, right? I mean, literally, if we don't win the Darlington race and we're not in the playoffs, I mean, guys were literally counting down the days till the end of the season. And it wasn't, a good reason that they were counting down. It was literally just so they could finally get out of here. And, to go from that to a complete 180 of just, I mean, it literally feels like the lights are brighter. It just feels so much more energetic. Just it honestly feels a lot like when I first got here, when, Kevin was winning 9-10 races a year, like every car in the company was winning. Just the entire atmosphere and just the energy in the air is totally different than what we had prior to going to Darlington. And just these last 2 or 3 weeks have been really, really fun. Just being back at Stewart-Haas, it honestly feels just like the heydays. So, yeah, guys are extremely excited. Guys are motivated. I mean, we really feel like we can go and, battle for a championship. We just got to get through this hole that we kind of dug after Atlanta. And if we can survive this first round, we feel really, really good about it. So hopefully, we can just keep the momentum rolling and keep everybody excited to be here.
All right, so let's talk about the playoffs now. Let's focus, like you say, on the cut line with just one race to go in the first round of the playoffs. What are your thoughts?
Well, just to look at the points specifically, coming into Bristol, obviously Joey Logano's advanced with his win at Atlanta. Christopher Bell, Austin Cindric, and Alex Bowman, they all have over 40-point margins to the cut line, and they're functionally safe. Somewhere I honestly did not expect Cindric to be, given he only had one win this season. Not the most impressive results these past 2 years, but he's had a very impressive and consistent first round, some tracks that really suit him on a super speedway and a road course, so we'll see if that continues. But well done for Cindric. Daniel Suarez enters with a 36-point buffer. Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott both come in with 30-point advantages. Ryan Blaney enters plus 29, Kyle Larson plus 26, and William Byron plus 25. But just right around the cut line is where things get really interesting. Chase Briscoe and Ty Gibbs enter in 11th and 12th, respectively, both 6 points ahead of Denny Hamlin. Briscoe has the tiebreaker. And then Brad Keselowski trails by 12, and Martin Truex trails by 14. And then a little bit further back, like we talked about, is Harrison Burton. He's minus 20, very likely out of contention. But keep an eye on this battle right around the cut line. 6 points in it. 4 drivers will be out, whatever happens. Will it include Truex in his final full-time season? Will it include Hamlin as he tries to hunt for his first championship with 54 wins to his credit?
And, I don't want to disparage Harrison Burton. He is 20 points below the line. And you know what? Chase Briscoe was 21 points below the line. So, Harrison could turn it around this weekend, and he may not need to win, but he may get that top 5, top 10 finish that may turn around, and people will have other issues, and maybe I don't know. We'll see. So in other news, Jordan Bianchi of the Athletic reported that Trackhouse Racing president Ty Norris, who has been everywhere, he was with Michael Waltrip Racing and Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Great guy. If you ever see him in the garage area, take a second to say hi. He's a great guy, and been around the sport for a long time. But reports are that he's going to be parting ways with Trackhouse, and nothing bad. It's an amicable parting. And we're hearing that Norris may be headed to Kaulig Racing in an unknown capacity. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we talked about Kaulig quite a few times recently. Got a lot of articles up there about them on Cup Scene. But they've been making some really big moves with their Xfinity Series driver lineup, trying to rediscover some of the speed they've had in the past, go back to trophy hunting. But getting Ty Norris seems like a really big step into that program if that news is true. So it really seems like they're making big investments into their program, trying to find that speed again and putting the money into it.
Yeah, and I'm not a big person on all this, breaking news or rumors, but I've known Jordan for a long time. Other than the fact that he doesn't wear socks, I love the guy. But he's usually pretty spot on. So if he's hearing that, it's probably true, and we'll probably. I know from a PR side, the PR team is probably scrambling there. It wouldn't surprise me if we didn't hear anything in the next couple days about that. So look forward to that. But let's look forward to Bristol. Look, Denny Hamlin has 4 wins there, including 2 in the last 2 visits, including this past spring. My thing is he going to be too cocky and too confident, or is he going to kind of, yes, I've got 2 wins, but I still need to play it right in order to move forward, in order to be able to move on to the playoffs? You kind of got a dark horse.
Yeah, my driver to watch this weekend is John Hunter Nemechek. He's only got 1 start at Bristol in the Cup Series from earlier this year. Obviously, it's his rookie season, but he was able to drive up to 6th despite Legacy Motor Club kind of struggling this year and not bringing the best equipment. And Nemechek has multiple top 5s at Bristol in trucks and Xfinity. There was some tire wear we talked about extensively back in the spring, but Nemechek was really able to lean on that unpredictable tire wear to put his skills on full display, and he might struggle with the limitations of his car with a more typical tire if that's what happens this race. But we don't know what the racing could look like, and Nemechek could take advantage of another unpredictable tire. But my pick on the track has to be Kyle Larson. He's the best numerical average finish in Bristol in recent years. And he really hasn't started the playoffs quite as strong, although he's done fine. He's got a 26-point buffer, but quite as strong as he would have liked. And I think Larson turns his postseason around, gets back to winning ways with a win at Bristol.
That wouldn't surprise me to see Kyle Larson, but I think you're right. He's got that 26-point advantage, and I think if he keeps his nose clean this weekend, he's a sure bet to move on to the next round. And that's probably what he's doing, is just cutting his losses for now and seeing what happens. But any of those Hendrick drivers, Chase Elliott or William Byron, it wouldn't shock me to see one of them in victory lane. But Hendrick's been kind of quiet in these playoffs. It's been Fords, man. And they've got those Chevys, and it's kind of been quiet in the playoffs. So it looked to see, turn their earlier season form around where they seem to be winning everything. But now when it comes to the playoffs, one of my sure bets that's I don't think is going to advance is Brad Keselowski. And I hope he proves me wrong. But Brad has just struggled in these playoffs. And I don't think that we're gonna see him move forward. But obviously, after his run at Watkins Glen, Chase Briscoe has the momentum, and he feels good about his chances for advancing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't wreck yourself, right? But you got to be aggressive. It's going to take a big day for us. I think the big thing for us is qualifying good. That's going to be a huge key. That's something that we've been really, really good at Bristol is qualifying. So I feel good about it. Bristol is a place that I would say as a company is probably one of our top 5 tracks. And then just me personally, I feel like it's one of my better racetracks as well. So I feel really, really good about going into Bristol. Even if we were below the cut line, I would still feel good about it. But we're going to need a big day. I mean, the guys that we're going to be racing, Truex, Denny Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, it's kind of all the guys that are the typical players that are in the mix to win at Bristol. So it's going to take a big day for us. But I'm confident that we can go there and have a good day, or a good night. And if we just do everything that we can do and execute from start to finish, at the end of the day, that's all that we can control. We can't control what the other guys do, but if we put in what we feel like is the best race possible for our race team, I'm confident that it'll be enough.
So in the conversation we had with Chase, there were some other tidbits. Of course, his wife Marissa is expecting twins any day, like any day. So that's the big news in his world. And he also said he had planned on spending time at JGR prior to next season. Actually going to Joe Gibbs Racing, where he's going to be replacing Martin Truex Jr. Where, by the way, he said that he would realize if he was going to be advancing and the car he's going to take over with Martin Truex Jr., he realized that he would be knocking him out of the playoffs. But he said he didn't care because he's got a race for himself and his team. But he had planned to spend, one day a week over at JGR. However, that changed when the playoffs came and they said, no, don't worry about coming over here. Although he said James Small has texted him every week to give him encouragement and everything. So the babies are due October 8th. And it's going to happen on October 8th, which is a Tuesday, because they're already over. She's already over 35 weeks. So they're going to induce labor, but it could happen any day. Now, normally when you're out of the playoffs, drivers can get pretty creative when it comes to being home for wives having babies. But with Chase in the playoffs and with so much at stake, the team's already decided if it happens on a race weekend, since he's in the playoffs, especially this weekend at Bristol, he will stay. He will qualify the car. And he will race the car no matter what happens, which, man, I would hate to be in that guy's shoes because, just knowing that your wife's going to have a baby and you can't be there. But I see the bigger picture. You got to look at the big picture. So let's hope, Marissa, hold it in, girl, until next Tuesday when everything's said and done and he can be there. But we'll see what happened. Meanwhile, he did say that Joe Gibbs Racing has offered him their plane, and he's been riding with Coach Gibbs the last couple of weeks. So I can't imagine as a young driver having a mentor. First is Tony Stewart, and now Coach Gibbs. And I'll tell you, one of my storylines that I would love to see at the end of this year is that young man not only welcoming the twins into his family, but if he could turn around and win this championship, and trust me, he doesn't like being called an underdog at all. You would tell him that he's not an underdog. He wants to win this thing. I think that would be the best storyline in sports for a long time if he could go out driving the number 14 that Tony Stewart ran and winning a title for Tony Stewart before he leaves. I think that would be an awesome storyline, and I hope it happens. So we'll see about that. But speaking of storylines, you are supposed to be in school, okay? Right? But you're not going to be in school this week. You're going to be doing what?
I will be in Paris enjoying the fact that I'm in Europe, go all over, explore some, and then we will have school starting next week. So we're here a little bit early, but it's going to take advantage of the time before it starts.
Well, there you go. And I'm happy for you. I lived in Paris for a while when I covered Formula One. I love that city. So yes, go to Paris, go to France, have fun, ride the Euro train and drink wine and sit out on the balcony and watch the sunset and everything. So you'll be back next week once you get back into the swing of things in school. And after you filled up on a bunch of Belgian chocolate and drank a lot of French wine, and had a lot of bread. So I know you'll be watching Bristol this weekend, obviously. I mean, Definitely. You can't get away from that. Yeah. You'll be there for that. I'll be watching Bristol. I'll be covering it. You folks watch Bristol. Send me your picks. Go to Cup Scene on X. Let us know who your picks are. And we'll see how it all shakes out. Look, the parity we've seen this year with all these fantastic races and all these great finishes, it's just going to continue, and it's just going to ramp up coming into the playoffs. So there's no doubt in my mind we're going to have a lot to talk about next week. So make sure you tune back in here, subscribe, like, let us know. We appreciate it. We will talk to you next week, and hopefully Owen will come back from France and be speaking English. If not, we'll have to get a translator. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening to Speed Talk Live. For questions or just to tell us how bad our production is or to leave other feedback, leave us a comment below. For all the latest NASCAR news, visit www.cupscene.com. Until next time, peace out and let's go racing.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.